Hello everybody, this is your instructor Janine, and in this video we're going to talk about one of the most famous constellations and one that is the most easily recognizable in the sky, Orion the Hunter. Before we examine what Orion looks like in the sky, let's take a look at the legend that precedes the constellation. Its bright stars have been identified as a person for thousands of years. Orion has been mentioned in Homer's Odyssey, and in the present day, many people have seen this group of stars make up the logo for the film company called Orion. The ancient Arabs were said to be the first to recognize this constellation, but the most famous legends are derived from Greek and Roman legends. Orion was often the hunting companion of Artemis, who was the god of the moon and hunt, and the sister to Apollo. This was in the Greek legends, and he was always known for his hunting prowess. He has also been said to be depicted as a giant in a few legends as well. Orion's current name is derived from Greek mythology. He was said to be a gigantic, supernaturally strong hunter of ancient times. One myth recounts Gaia's rage of Orion, who threatened to kill every animal on the planet. The angry goddess of the earth released a deadly scorpion on Orion. The scorpion punctured Orion in his heel and ended up killing him. This legend is said to be the reason that the constellations of Scorpius and Orion are never in the sky at the same time. So if we look at this constellation chart right here, we can see that Orion is right here, seen during the winter months. Okay, and then Scorpius is on the exact opposite of the sky and can only be seen in the summer months. So these two constellations will never be seen together in the sky. In another legend, Orion was known as a son of Poseidon, and he was still classified as a great hunter. Artemis, who was the Greek god of the moon and the hunt, fell in love with Orion and neglected her duties of lighting the night sky. One day, her twin Apollo, who was the sun god, saw Orion bathing in the seas far away from shore. He shined bright light on the hunter, making him look like just a dark blur among the waves. He dared his sister to hit the black shape in the sea, and in her pride, she did hit Orion, and she didn't really know that she killed him. When his body washed up on a shore, she realized what she had done, and in her grief, she placed his body in the sky with his hunting dogs. It is said that this is why the moon is so cold and lifeless, is because Artemis lost interest in life and was inconsolable. This painting here shows Diana, which is the Roman version of Artemis, grieving over the body of Orion. But Orion is said to have recovered quickly because he chased the Pleiades in the sky, and the Pleiades were 7 beautiful nymphs, and they were located in the constellation of Taurus. So you can easily find the Pleiades if you can find Orion, and that's what we'll start addressing next, is what Orion looks like as a pattern in the sky and why he is so important. Let's take a look at the pattern of Orion. So here is a picture of what Orion looks like in the sky. Some things may stand out to you. First, you might notice some bright stars of different colors. You probably can notice the 3 stars right in alignment right here. And you might notice this little celestial object right here. So here is what Orion looks like when we trace the pattern out on the stars. Part of this is slightly missing up at the top, but what this is supposed to represent is Orion's body, okay? And here are his belt stars. His legs are represented down here, and he's holding, sometimes it's depicted as a bow and arrow, sometimes it's depicted as him holding a lion or a shield. There's many different versions out there. And then up here is where he could be holding his club or his sword. Right here is supposed to be his sword in his belt. Okay, and as we go through these different pictures of Orion, I really want you to become familiar with this pattern. Okay, here is another version of what Orion looks like. Now this photograph is a little bit of a long exposure photograph, so you can see some of the background nebula and gases and dust shine through. And this happens when you take a photograph for a long period of time. And what you can see is Orion's nebula right down here shines through. And you can also see a little bit of nebulosity through the belt stars. And we'll examine this a little bit later in the video. Here is another long exposure photograph of Orion, and most likely this photo has been enhanced using Photoshop or other digital programs that exist out there. And hopefully as you look at this photograph, you can point out the belt stars and the shoulder of Orion and then the knees or legs of Orion. So again, the belt stars are the most defining feature right here. You can see this bright orange star, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And here is another shoulder star. And then you can see another bright star. This one's called Rigel. And then another bright star. And of course, since this is a longer exposure photograph than what we've seen before, you can really see a lot of the background or in between nebulas and gases that exist in Orion. Here is another depiction of what Orion looks like, and I wanted to show this to you because as you learn more about the constellations, whether you look online or you read about them in books, you will always find that there are variations in what the constellation patterns look like. I also like this picture because it shows you what the brightest stars are based upon the Greek letter designations. So here, Betelgeuse, many people pronounce it Betelgeuse, but it's really Betelgeuse, is marked as an alpha star. So that is the brightest star in Orion. Then we move down to Rigel, and this is the beta star of Orion. So this is the second brightest star of Orion. And we continue in this pattern as you go, and each of these have a label behind it based upon how bright it is. Now I want to talk to you about why Orion is such an important constellation to know when you're looking at the winter sky. It may also help for you to have the worksheet that I attached to this lesson called Orion Guide to the Sky. And as I go through this next portion of the video, what you can do is translate what's written on the screen to your paper, and this will help solidify the material. So, one of the reasons that Orion's is so important is one, that it's easily recognizable, but second is that it helps point to all the other major constellations in the winter sky. So let's start with the belt stars. If you follow the belt stars down, what this does is it points to the star called Sirius in Canis Major, and Canis Major is Orion's hunting dog, the larger one, hence the name Major. And Sirius is a very bright star. In fact, it is the brightest star in the night sky, and it's very close to us. It's only about 8 light years away, which is one of the reasons it's so bright. Next, if we go back to the belt stars, okay, we're at the belt stars again, what we want to do is follow the belt stars up, and that will point to a star called Aldebaran, which is in Taurus. Moving along, if you find the shoulder stars and you follow a line from Bellatrix to Betelgeuse, what this does is point to the star called Procyon, or it's also pronounced Procyon, depending on who you talk to, and this star is in the constellation Canis Minor. Now, if you go to the beta star in Orion, which is known as Rigel, and you move up to Betelgeuse and keep going, what you will find is that this will lead you right to Gemini. And there are two bright stars in Gemini, and I'll show you what those are in the later portion of the video. And this is an easy way to find where Gemini is located. And finally, if we go the opposite side of Orion, down at the bottom, up to Bellatrix, and we keep going, it will point to the constellation called Auriga, which is the charioteer. So this is the reason that Orion is so important, because it's just guides you to everything else around it. So if you're working with the worksheet called Orion Guide to the Sky, what you want to do is draw all these arrows in, and then use your star chart to draw the rest of the constellations in so you can see what the constellation positions are in relation to this as well. Further along in the video, I will also show you larger portions of the sky so you can also see actual pictures of the different orientations of these constellations that I mentioned to you. Remember, if you can find Orion, you can find all the other winter constellations in the sky. Here is another great shot of Orion. If you're starting to notice the belt stars, perhaps the orangish star called Betelgeuse, you're off to a really good start. And if you are starting to see other patterns in this photo, you are really developing your observational skills when it comes to stargazing. The other pattern I'm hoping you see is this triangle right here. And this is called the Winter Triangle, and it is an asterism, which is not really an official constellation. It's more of a easily recognizable pattern that's used to help us identify other constellations. Taking a closer look at the Winter Triangle, we'll start off with Betelgeuse, since that is the one that is in Orion. And this is a star that's towards the end of its life. It's a red giant star, and it is still very bright despite being 310 light years away. Moving down, we have Sirius right here. And again, Sirius is very bright because it's close to us, only 8 light years away. So that's why it appears very bright in our sky. And then moving upwards, we have Procyon. And this star is about 11 light years away. So again, another reason why it is pretty bright in our sky. So if you live in a place that has lots of light pollution, these 3 stars are really going to stand out to you. Here is another unique shot of the Winter Triangle, and this is actually called a star trail picture. And how these pictures are taken is when you are using your camera, you find a way to have your shutter stay open, and what ends up happening is you capture the movement of the Earth, or the rotation of the Earth happening, and the stars moving over a period of time. So as you look at this photo, see if you can identify the area of where Orion is. First thing you want to look for are the belt stars. Can you find the 3 belt stars? And then from there, see if you can point out Sirius, the bright star, or the bright star trail, I should say. And from there, you should be able to point out the other Winter Triangle asterism. So let me point this out for you. Here is where the belt stars are, and here's the shape of Orion, right there. And then using the belt stars, you find Sirius, Procyon, and Betelgeuse. So this would be the star trail picture of the Winter Triangle. And using star trails are just really a great way to see if you're absorbing what I'm teaching you. So you may find star trail pictures in other videos as well. Here we've got another star trail picture. And looking at this, are you able to find Orion? And are you able to find the Winter Triangle? If you're struggling to find this, hit pause on your computer and then just take time to look at this picture. So here is where Orion is. You should see the belt stars, and then here is the Wintle Triangle with star trails. We're going to keep practicing how to find Orion, how to find the Winter Triangle and other constellations that Orion points to. And here, this is a large sky view, and it has part of the northern hemisphere and then some of the southern hemisphere constellations. And I'll be honest with you, as I was in the beginning of this class, is that I'm not super familiar with a lot of the southern constellations. I do live in Hawaii and I can see some of them, but being that I live in the northern hemisphere, I just haven't had a lot of exposure to what the southern sky looks like. That being said, let's go back to Orion. Look at this picture and can you find Orion? Also, look at the bright stars. Can you identify which ones those are? Can you point out the asterism of the Winter Triangle? And if you can't, a good habit for you to do is to press pause on this video so you can take time to look at this. And when you're ready, just hit play again, and then I will go over the answers with you. So looking at the answers, we have Orion right here. You can find the belt stars and point right here to Sirius, and then go up to find Procyon, and then down to find Betelgeuse, which is the reddish star. So here's the Winter Triangle, and here's Orion. Now, some other things you might want to point out here, or that I will point out to you, are some of the southern items that I do know. We have the Southern Cross right here, and Canopus is another close range star in relation to the Earth. And I didn't mark this, but this is one of the Magellanic Clouds, and that is a small irregular galaxy that is close to our home Milky Way galaxy. And hopefully you can point out the Milky Way galaxy in this picture. And it's all this nebulosity and cloudy area right here. This is the Milky Way that we are looking at. So again, we're going to keep looking at different pictures to practice finding Orion and other constellations. Moving on, I would like to teach you about the winter hexagon, and this is another asterism that you can find in the winter sky, and it really just includes all those major constellations that I mentioned earlier in the video. So here's Orion, and if you trace all the bright stars that are in the winter sky, it does make the pattern of a hexagon. So let's take a look at what this looks like in the real sky. So take a glance. Can you find Orion? If you can, great. If not, hit pause and give yourself some time to figure out where it is. If you are understanding and seeing where Orion is, we are looking at him right here. And again, let's use the guide to the sky that I taught you earlier. You want to follow the belt stars down and you can find Sirius. And in this particular picture, this is where Canis Major is, or actually right there, there it is. Okay, and then go back to Orion and move across the shoulders and we'll find Procyon, and that in its two-star constellation, Canis Minor. Going back to Orion, let's go back to the belt stars, and we're going to move up, and it's going to point indirectly to this reddish star right here, which is called Aldebaran, and that is the eye of the bull, and this is Taurus right here. This is a V-shaped face of Taurus, and then its horns. Actually, there's a horn, and there's a horn. And we'll move back down to Orion, and let's find Gemini now. You start at the bottom bright star, move up to Betelgeuse, and then we have Gemini right here. And Gemini has two bright stars. We have Pollux and Castor. And then let's reverse back to Orion. We'll go down to the other side of the leg, moving up, 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 and it leads you generally to Auriga. Now remember, this is a 2D picture, and in reality that the Earth is in 3D, and the curvature of the Earth doesn't make a perfect hexagon, but there is the winter hexagon right here that I'm tracing out. So again, this is a very large picture. Most of the winter sky is in this photograph. And this is why Orion is so important. It just will lead you to the other constellations. Okay, more practice again with the winter hexagon. So this is another similar picture to what you just saw earlier, but it's just a little bit of a different viewpoint. So again, the most obvious constellation that should stand out to you would be Orion. Perhaps you can point the winter triangle out as well. It is a little bit brighter than the entire winter hexagon, okay? But if you're starting to point out and connect the dots between the bright stars, that's a good thing. And we'll revisit this a little bit later in the course when I teach you all the other winter constellations. And then when you come back to this picture, you should be able to really see them if I did my job correctly. So just to point out what these look like, here are how all the constellations are arranged. So you have Orion right here. You have Canis Major, or at least part of it right here. We find Canis Minor, two little star constellation. We've got Gemini right here. We have Auriga here. And we have Taurus right there. Okay, and Taurus is very identifiable as well because it's got this star cluster called the Pleiades, which I mentioned to you earlier, and these are the beautiful, lovely nymphs that Orion is chasing through the sky, and luckily they're protected by Taurus the bull. And another constellation I did not point out earlier is Cancer, and Cancer is easily identified because of this beautiful cluster called the Beehive cluster, and we'll talk about that later in another video. But again, I want you to really get used to this order of the constellations in the sky, and the more you identify them in the pictures, the easier it gets when you go outside and try to view this. Keep in mind that depending on where you live, some of the stars may not be this bright. You may not be able to see the galaxy, and it's getting harder and harder with the more and more light pollution that exists in our world today. But hopefully, as you keep going outside and viewing the sky over time, you will eventually get to learn and identify these constellations. Let's move on and learn a little bit more about the brightest stars in Orion. The first brightest star is Betelgeuse, and again, we know that it's an orangish red star, and you can easily see that with the naked eye, and with a telescope or binoculars, that becomes even more pronounced as well. And Betelgeuse is an Arabic name standing for the House of the Twins. And the reason it's named after the House of the Twins is because this star originally used to be part of Gemini way back thousands of years ago. So it just kind of held that name. And it is a huge reddish orange star, and it's actually larger than the diameter of the orbit of Venus. So that's a huge, huge star, and it is 310 light years away. Moving on to the second brightest star is Rigel, and Rigel is the Arabic name for foot, so that is obvious. It would represent the foot or the leg or the knee, depending on which depiction you decide to go with for Orion. And it really is a brilliant white star, and it has 3 companion stars that orbit around it, but it's really just too faint to see because of how bright Rigel is. And it is 900 light years away, so it's very, very far, but still bright because it's such a big star. The third brightest star is called Bellatrix, and it is Latin for female warrior. And if you're a Harry Potter fan like me, you probably might understand why J.K. Rowling decided to pick this name for one of the most fiercest characters in the books. And Bellatrix is 8 times more massive than the sun, and it's still a very young star because it's only about 20 million years. Now, we say, oh, that's it, only 20 million years? Some stars live for billions of years, some live for trillions of years. The stars that are only 1 million years old and are already in the giant phase tell us that it's very huge and it's towards the end of its life. So Bellatrix is about 250 light years away. And just to look at size comparison, what we're looking at here is Bellatrix, which is a huge bluish white giant star. We have the sun right here, and then we have Algol, which is a variable star in Perseus. And what that means is it changes its brightness because it actually has another companion star, and when the companion stars line up together, it tends to be brighter. But we'll again talk about that in another video. So this can just give you an idea of the size difference between stars. And size does indirectly determine color. The bigger the star, the brighter it is, the hotter it is, okay? And the smaller the star, it's typically smaller and a different color. So again, just to review, star temperature and color and size are all related with each other. As we still look at the bright stars, we of course need to mention the belt stars. And a common misconception about constellations is that just because we see these patterns of stars, many people believe that they're actually grouped together, and this is not necessarily the case. Within the belt stars, they are fairly close to each other, but they don't really make up their own system. So these are the different belt stars that we have. We have Alnitak right here, Alnilam here, and Mintaka right here, okay? And when we take a little closer look at these, okay, we have Alnitak, which is 1100 light years away, and if you can see the nebulosity right here, this little nebula contains the very famous Horsehead Nebula, which I will discuss later on in the video. Then we have Al-Nilam, which is Arabic for string of pearls, and that dates back to the Arabic legend, which I didn't discuss earlier, and this star is 1200 light years away. And then moving upwards, we have Mintaka, and this again is another Arabic word for belt, and it is 1400 light years away. And another thing you can notice is the Great Orion Nebula. So these are really great things to look at through any type of telescope or binoculars that you may have. And if we zoom in just a little bit closer, here's that Horsehead Nebula I was talking about. So this, of course, is a long exposure photograph that was taken, and whenever we take long exposure photographs, they're also colored differently to help bring out the different features. So looking right through here, you can see this is where the Horsehead Nebula is. I have tried looking at this with binoculars, and I've not been able to see the Horsehead Nebula with binoculars, but I can see the nebulosity. If you have a very good high-powered telescope, you should definitely be able to point that out. Finally, let's take a look at some of the celestial objects that you can see within Orion. Taking a look at this picture right here, you might notice some brightly colored dots, and these are different representations of other celestial objects. I'm only really going to focus on the major ones that you can see within Orion. So moving on, here is the same picture, and then I arranged this actual photograph sitting right next to it. So you can see a lot of the nebulosity that is going through, I don't want to say going through Orion, but is depicted within Orion. And I want to hit on this major one right here. And you can see it right here as well. And this one is called the Great Orion Nebula, or also called Orion's Nebula. Other designations include M42 and M43, and where these come from are from Charles Messier, and he was a French astronomer in the 1700s, and what he was trying to do was as he was cataloging the skies, he was really interested in finding comets. But when he started looking at these different objects, he realized they weren't comets. So he started cataloging them and the name stuck. So you're going to find different Messier objects as you go through and take this course. And M42 and M43 are always depicted together. And these two pictures are oriented in the same fashion. So this is the larger view of Orion, and here is the Great Orion Nebula right here. And if we were to zoom in, this is what it would look like. And it has this very distinctive shape. And what's going on in here is it's a stellar nursery. New stars are being born within here. And it's really one of the most studied nebulas that exist. And moving on, we also have the Horsehead Nebula, which is one I discussed earlier, and it's a dark absorption nebula. So what this means is that it is really blocking the light that is behind it, and it has this very distinctive horse head shape. And I put two pictures here because what we often see with astronomy pictures is all these beautiful, brilliant colors. But if you're going to look at this through a telescope, this is more likely what you're going to see, a black and white version of this nebula. But even though that we don't really see these spectacular colors, it still is an incredible sight to see. And the reason that astrophotographers give these different colors to the photographs is so we can really see the definition within the object. So if you compare this area right here to this area right here, you can see a lot more definition right here. So again, if you would look at the Orion Nebula, or let's pick this one, you're not going to see these really great, amazing colors when you look through binoculars or telescope, but that's okay. You still want to be able to find the object. So if we go back to the Horsehead Nebula, this is again a fantastic sight to see, or I should say this one, because this is what you're more likely to view. And to go back to this picture you've seen before, here are the belt stars. And if you look at this through any type of magnification, here is where you're going to find the Horsehead Nebula. Well, folks, we reached the end of our video about Orion the Hunter, so let's review the major points we discussed. Orion is a constellation that is best seen in the winter months. The way you want to find it is by looking for the 3 belt stars that are right in a row. If you can find the belt stars, you're likely to find the larger constellation. The bright stars you want to look for are Betelgeuse and Rigel. Celestial objects that you might want to find are right here, Orion's Nebula, or the Great Orion Nebula, and the Horsehead Nebula, which is in this general vicinity. Remember, you have to keep going outside and practicing. That's the only way you're going to get used to seeing the constellations. And if you live in a place that has a lot of light pollution, try making an effort to go somewhere away from the city and the lights so the stars stand out brighter to you. Thank you so much for watching. Keep going outside, look at the sky, start to learn it, start to love it. And if you have any questions for me, please leave it in the comments section below. Thank you so much.